Cool.
All right, good afternoon, everybody. Thank you for waiting. Just finishing up some of the technology components. I'm sure you are all aware of this process by now. So my name's Ian Grant. I'm the Executive Director of UNH's Entrepreneurship Center, or known as the E-Center on campus. I'm just going to take a few moments to talk a little bit about the E-Center and our programs, and then how we landed on this amazing semester kickoff event. So the E-Center is the heart of ideas, innovation, and entrepreneurship on campus. We're open to all students, all colleges, all majors. And we do that because there's no grades, no credits. Students find us on a voluntary basis. So we provide really high impact experiential programs designed for students at all levels of interest in the process. So we help students who already have companies. We help them get better at it, help them launch it, help them find mentors, help them in some cases find funding. We help students who have just maybe the smallest idea that really don't know what to do with the next step and mentor them through that process. And sometimes that includes coaching for competitions or launching the company, or maybe find out that it's an idea that customers don't want. We also provide, which is sort of the bulk of it, a wide variety of programs that encourage students to take that first step. If you're curious, if you want to sort of stretch your comfort zone and realize that anything is possible. So if you want more information about what we do, I'd say go to our website, which is unhecenter.com. That's unhecenter.com. Just a couple things to note for programs that are coming up in addition to this kickoff event. Strongly encourage you to register for our I2 Passport program. I2 Passport is an innovative, nationally recognized program that rewards you for participating in events just like this and have a chance to win $25,000 to help pay off student loans or pay for tuition. So again, you'll find that on our website as well. In the next couple of weeks, you'll see information about 2 of our idea creation boot camps. These are sort of a hands-on interactive program that's designed to give you a framework to think about idea creation and then exercises to do that. So it tends to be our #1 rated program in the history. Later in the fall, we're going to do an Ideathon or Hackathon. And that basically is a 24-hour period of which you and some team members work on an idea. And this year we're partnering with Gather, which is a local food bank on the Seacoast. They have several problems that they want solved. And so students will work to create innovative solutions to that, present those solutions, and also there's cash prizes for that. And then finally, towards the end of the semester, my colleague at Babson, who just wrote a best-selling book called First Pitch, is going to do a pitch boot camp. So whether it's pitching an idea or pitching yourself, it's phenomenal. And everyone who participates will actually get one of the New York Times bestseller books themselves. So again, go to unhecenter.com. So today's BIPOC workshop with successful Black entrepreneurs came from a series of conversations last spring when we looked at the E-Center to see how are we doing in our mission to be open to all students, all colleges, all majors, and could we do better? And in this case, we really wanted to focus on underrepresented students and students of color. So while it was concluded that we do a very good job, Gino and Joel and several other students that we talked to suggested that we have a program, which is today's program, that directly engages all students, but particularly connects with underrepresented students to let them understand what's possible and that ideas and moving those ideas forward is possible. So today's panelists are going to share their stories, which we hope will inspire you. I do want to give a shout out to our co-sponsors, McNair, Trio, Community Equity Diversity Office, Beauregard Center, NSBE, and Mezeco. So with that, I want to introduce Gino Miller, class of 17, a friend, CEO, founder of Study, who's going to be the moderator of today's event.
Thank you so much, Ian, for that wonderful introduction. And hello, everyone. Super excited that, you all were able to show up today. I thank you for finding the time to show up today, whether you be an entrepreneur, whether you be a student at the University of New Hampshire, or a parent, or just attending to see, what's going on here, to gather some knowledge on what entrepreneurship is like, or maybe just to support one of the speakers or one of the attendees. We appreciate your attendance for sure. The reason that we really wanted to organize this BIPOC workshop is because, well, obviously the current climate of what we're in our country right now. the social justice issues that are occurring. Racial injustice is very prominent right now. And there are a lot of challenges for entrepreneurs as a whole because of these times, but especially for people of color. And we feel that this is a great opportunity to show that there are definitely individuals and organizations out there who support the growth of entrepreneurs of color on a consistent basis. And our goal is really just to paint the framework of what entrepreneurship is. I remember myself when I was a student at the University of New Hampshire, I had a ton of questions that I wanted to get answered. You know, and the East Center for me was that place that I went to have those questions answered. You know, I had an idea. I graduated from high school. I was one of the few fortunate ones who actually had a goal or an entrepreneurial idea that I was pursuing going into college, but I still had no idea of where to start. You know, in a perfect world, you know, if I waved a magic wand, I would have had a workshop like this, a BIPOC workshop like this, to where I can go there, ask questions. It's a safe space. There's no judgment, you know, to really iron out, you know, what are the next steps that I take? And especially, again, with right now, everyone has to work remote, you know, so for example, speaking to investors, just, you know, an example off the top of my head, we can't do that in person anymore, right? So there's a lot of things that change with regards to speaking to, you know, whatever your audience may be. And that's just one example of exactly what we're, you know, exactly why we're here. We really want to add guidance in that regard. Um, Now, what you're going to see here during this event, what you're going to leave with is accessible resources to help you take action to move forward on whatever your idea may be or whatever your reason for being here may be. And what do I mean by that? The E-Center provides different resources and frameworks to help you grow your businesses. For example, a business model canvas. If you go to the unhecenter.com, like Ian said, you'll see all of those resources there. In addition to that, our speakers will provide us with resources as well. To different accelerator programs, to different articles online, to different things to help you move forward, regardless of whatever stage you may be and at least gain some knowledge in the direction that you're trying to go, right? So that's really why we're here. And again, I appreciate everyone for being here. Before now, the next phase of this program, we'll go into our speakers telling stories. They'll give their personal backgrounds and their personal stories on their companies, you know, how they became successful to this day, things of those sorts. But before we get into that, I think it's important for all of us to really just pay our respects to the people of color, Black, Latinx, Native American, Black and Indigenous people of color across our country who are fighting racism right now, and the people who have lost their lives to police brutality or acts of racism. So with that said, I'd like us to at least dedicate 60 seconds of silence to those who have lost their lives, if we'd be kind enough to do that. All right, thank you all. I appreciate that. Um, yeah, so let's get this show on the road. Um, yeah, so again, so the next phase of this, we'll go into our speakers giving backgrounds on what their journey has been like throughout entrepreneurship, what their journey has been like to become successful, and what it's like currently on their path to growing their companies. And our first speaker will actually be the founder of a company called Ecotext. And he is also a UNH graduate, and he has a very interesting journey. This particular speaker, see, I've known him since my sophomore year of college, so it's a very interesting perspective I have on him. But see, myself, I came into the University of New Hampshire as a football player. Joel, he was on the track team, and he comes from the Congo, and he came from the Congo with multiple records that he had already broken in the country of the Congo, excuse me, before he had come to the University of New Hampshire, broke multiple records, and is kind of taking that tenacity and vigor for breaking barriers into entrepreneurship. In fact, he's doing so in a way that will provide textbooks for free to college students. So our first speaker who will be addressing us today is Joel Nkuku, CEO and co-founder of Ecotext.
Well, appreciate the intro, Gino. It's very kind words. And like Gino mentioned, I graduated from the University of New Hampshire, class of 2018, electrical engineering. So shout out to all the Wildcats in attendance right now, especially those in SEPs. And like Gino mentioned, I did do track and field Division I at my tenure at UNH. And, you know, kind of my snapshot in my journey, I was a very heavily engineering student, so I really didn't know business or didn't really explore those worlds or didn't even really connect with too many individuals in that arena. But from my perspective, something that I constantly had a challenge with was buying my textbooks every semester. And I was pretty tech savvy. I was able to get them digitally online, just get the PDF version. And then I have my laptop and I'm good to go. Life is good, right? I'm not carrying 5 tons of books and I'm able to control F and search. And it was just much more convenient for me. And it wasn't until this one particular semester where I wasn't able to get a textbook for an engineering class that I had my junior year. And it was very frustrating because the textbook was on Amazon for about $350. And as a college student, $350 is basically your monthly salary, right? You have to start making decisions on, you know, what are you not going to be eating or what things you're going to have to be sacrificing. And I ended up splitting the cost with a bunch of friends. And looking at that landscape, I had kind of an aha moment in a sense where, you know, Netflix was really a big player at the time, dominating the music industry, or Spotify rather, dominating the music industry, Netflix dominating the video streaming industry. And you're able to get these services for, you know, $5.99, $9.99 a month, right? And I'm sitting here, why isn't textbooks the same deal? And so that was kind of where the thesis of Ecotext began was, hey, can we take this somewhat Spotify model and apply it to textbooks? And you know, over the last several years, we've continually built on it, but we've gone further, right? And our goal isn't only to address the affordability aspect of textbooks, but also the accessibility aspect. And we just launched our platform actually 2 weeks ago, where we're dynamically allowing students and educators to collaborate and really, you know, increase that engagement, but also invite more academic curiosity. So a lot of different, you know, components of what Ecotext is today, but really started with, hey, you know, let's create a subscription service for collegiate students who are able to get their textbooks affordably and get in a digital manner and have modern tools for the modern student. And it's really a roller coaster from 2018 to now 2020. But it kind of started with the E-Center. And, you know, like I mentioned in the beginning, I was an engineering student, and I had no idea that there were hundreds and thousands of competitions and funds that would give money away to students just for having ideas, right? That was like kind of brand new to me. And so when I embarked into this world, I really took advantage of it, continued to pitch all day long, was traveling across the world, became very confident. And that has really has led me to have kind of the persistency and determination to continue with Ecotech today. And the outlook is really good for us, right? Especially now, you know, with COVID-19, it's certainly been an accelerator, in a sense for us in our growth and definitely our trajectory. So yeah, that's kind of my snapshot journey. And one of the big things I really want to highlight throughout this talk today is no idea is too wild, and every challenge really is in itself an opportunity to create a solution. And you have to just simply sometimes embrace the chaos, and really come to understanding that the mistakes is really just opportunities to learn. So thank you.
Thank you so much, Joel, for the amazing background in the story. Yeah, and I can attest to many of the things that you're saying. Um, you know, Entering college, it wasn't clear all the time exactly how we were going to pay for textbooks, and let alone start a company, at the same time. So I can definitely attest to that, and I appreciate your insight there. Now, our next speaker here. Oh yeah, and so everyone will reserve time for Q&A at the end. I know there are probably a ton of questions, so please, hold your questions until the end of everyone speaking, so that way, we can make sure everyone gets a chance to, ask what needs to be asked. I'm sure there are a lot of repeat questions as well. So,
Just to add to
um,
that, Gino, sorry, people can just drop those in chat as well. So if you have a question as it goes along, just drop it in chat and we'll process those at the end.
awesome, even better. Um, yeah, so yeah, if we could just drop the questions in the chat, that'd be great. And so our next speaker here is someone who has a lot of experience in the game, to say the least. And she's actually spent 20 years, if I'm not mistaken, in the corporate industry prior to starting her current company, which is a marketing agency that helps grow and scale digital brands. And she has an amazing story to tell, very, very interesting perspective on things. And from the experience aspect of things, it's a huge help to entrepreneurs who may have not faced those challenges. So why go through the same things if, you don't have to? So our next speaker here is the owner of Drinkwater Marketing. Her name is Lisa Carter.
Good afternoon, everybody. I'm so excited that all of you have showed up today to hear some of our stories. I always love getting a chance to tell my story to young entrepreneurs. The path I chose to start Drinkwater Marketing was a long one, so it has been 20 years. And what I did is understanding that there is always, or generally, a lack of funding for minority-owned businesses. I decided to go to corporate America first and use my experience there, funding from working in corporate America to fund my own business. So I've worked for some big brands that you all would probably know. I moved here from New York City to work for a small company that did private label for Victoria's Secret, intimate apparel. I then moved on to a footwear company called Timberland Footwear that I did brand research, product development, and lastly, Staples Corporation down in Framingham. And so for those firms, I connected with consumers, understood how brands worked, what did they like about the brands between footwear, intimate apparel, and office supplies. But I still needed, as a lot of us living in rural America in a state like New Hampshire, where it's not a lot to do, not a lot of diversity, I had that drive to create something here. So I started a company called Drinkwater Productions at the time. And that was a event marketing company where I could take some of the equities that I've of events and things to do that I've found in LA and Miami, New York. I have been traveling to Hong Kong. I've been traveling to Mexico City. So I wanted to bring something back to the Granite State in the terms of really fun, cool events that I can enjoy, as well as share with some of the people in the state. So one of the first events that Drinkwater Productions LLC, that's our corporate name, created was the Portsmouth Restaurant Week. If any of you have ever partaken in the restaurant week that happens in downtown Portsmouth, that was created by myself and with the help of a wonderful team of people to bring that together. Since the event business, we started using digital tools to create Portsmouth Restaurant Week, Portsmouth Cocktail Competition. We did Merrimack Valley Restaurant Week. And what we started to see is that back then, digital was something new, social media was very new, but it was a great way to get the word out. So we became a marketing agency because of the tools that we use to get the word out about our own business became some of the attraction of using our business to be able to help other businesses in the area. So we were on the digital scene very early. So fast forward to today, Drinkwater Marketing was born in digital, and for lack of a better word, perfect for a pandemic. So in the last, we were off to a slow start the first few years, we're self-funded, and now we've focused on some niche industries. One is real estate, that we've found a very fruitful business for ourselves. So we're growing exponentially. As a matter of fact, we are now opening up a second location down in Clearwater, Florida. We launched that in July. So some of the things I just want to kind of share with you is that it can be slow, it can be fruitful. Self-funding is an option if you feel like you're not getting anywhere with some of the larger institutions that sometimes don't take a gamble on young people, don't take a gamble on people who look like me. But it's interesting, you can crowdsource, you can use some of your own dollars, get the experience from an industry that you want to be in, work that industry, make money, and apply those funds. And maybe instead of buying a new car, invest in yourself and your future. So that's what I did. I took my plan B. I made that a full-time job in 2012, and I've never looked back.
Amazing, amazing. And Lisa, I think we can attest to, like, just the path that you've taken is what so many people as a whole aspire to, accomplish. And to, be able to accomplish both so many things in the, the corporate sector as well as entrepreneurship, and catch it right now during the time that we're in is like, perfect. That's what we all aspire to accomplish. So I appreciate you shedding insight on that. If anyone has questions for Lisa, please save those until the Q&A after all of the speakers are done here, or just put them in the chat. That would be wonderful. So good stuff. So our last but not least speaker here, who will be speaking on behalf of us founders and entrepreneurs today, is actually someone who is my co-founder of my company. And so we have a very, very interesting perspective of each other, and really what it takes to become successful entrepreneurs of color. And again, during these times where a lot of businesses may be going out of business or may not even know where their next customer is coming from, we found a way to, pivot and meet both COVID and the attention around Black Lives Matter at a very interesting intersection point. But it's also interesting because we have a social aspect to it, to where we are directly giving back to our people, to Black lives, to Latinx lives, and also Native American lives, by creating wealth in our communities. I won't shed too much light on this. I'd rather let Rayvon himself say it. because again, he is actually one of the youngest and most accomplished um, black men that I've actually have ever met in my life, to be honest with you.
Mhm.
And what do I mean by that? So Rayvon graduated from the University of New Hampshire, and he was one of the he was one of the only people of color in his engineering classes. So long story short, him and I had met um, in college, and I was an entrepreneur in the business school. And he was finishing top of his classes, really doing great in all his academic achievements, but he was still having trouble finding a job upon graduating. So we couldn't really understand why that was. And we took a quick trip to Silicon Valley, Palo Alto. We lived out there for a few months to really understand, you know, what was the issue in tech as to why companies weren't being able to hire people of color the way that they wanted to, or at least claim that they wanted to. And it turned out that these companies were looking in the wrong areas. But you know, there were also there was tech talent of color out there that wanted to work for these companies but didn't have a way to showcase their skills directly to recruiters. And Rayvon is a living testament to that. So I'll let him speak more on that. He overcame those challenges to become a senior lead developer at Liberty Mutual and also a co-founder and CTO of our company called Study by the age of 25. He's only knocking more and more achievements down as the days go on. So Rayvon, I'll let you say, you know, more about your story and let us know, man.
Man, I appreciate that intro. I need to like record that and have that as like my ringtone when I wake up in the morning or something. You get me going. That was awesome. Good afternoon, everyone. How you guys are doing? Um, as Gino mentioned, Rayvon Millins, originally from Brooklyn, New York, actually just moved back. As Gino mentioned, you know, co-founder of Study. He touched on it real quickly, but Study is a career advancement platform for Black, Latinx, and Native American folks. We specifically specialize in getting them career opportunities in the tech area and field. So specifically, like, you know, engineers or back end and different things of that nature. We end up doing like a full process and screening talent all the way down. And like Gina mentioned, through our research, we kind of just try to figure out what the actual problem was. Once we recognize that, you know, almost half of people graduating with computer science and STEM degrees were people of color, but they only account for like 9% of the actual employed people in the tech industry. So that let us know that, hey, it wasn't really an education issue. People are studying these things, people are going forward. So there was a disconnect as to actual placing people and getting that kind of going. And what I wanted to kind of touch on today was something that I think is like is important, even something that even Lisa mentioned, touched on, saying, you know, working in corporate and kind of getting your business going and stuff, and even, you know, Joel could probably speak to this as well, having something else and then kind of working on it. So I want to talk about, like, you know, starting your business while like working like full time. And you know, not everybody has the fortunate path to have like an idea and immediately come out the gate, you're making a bunch of money and you could just immediately follow that path, and that's that. A lot of us have to go a multitude of ways to kind of get to where you are. So I didn't want to just only speak about where I'm at, to not to kind of gloss over the fact that how you kind of get there. And it takes you know, doing both things takes resolve, right? You know, you have to really believe in yourself and things of that nature. But I just had a couple of things I wanted to touch on here of like of what that is, of starting your business while working full time, whether that be, you know, in corporate America, or whether that be, you know, even just a delivery person, like anywhere in that stage, or what that would kind of be. So first, what I want to say is your current employment, especially in these times, is a blessing. Okay, having some kind of employment is a blessing. Being able to count on an actual check to be able to move and keep going is a blessing. So I wouldn't look at that as like a curse of like, well, I got to do this and I can't do the other thing. It's like, everything all happens. Everything, one thing I recognize in these last few years is that everything kind of happens and plays out for a reason. So I would definitely kind of shift the mindset and recognize the blessing to be able to have the current situation to focus on something else. And in doing so, what it does is it kind of takes, undue pressure off your business to produce right away. If years ago when we, kind of started to study stuff, when we started studying, we were kind of going at it. And then if in the beginning I wasn't able to have an employment outside of that, then we were kind of looking at the company and like, oh, it has to produce everything right now. Because I have to live, I have to be able to have a roof and afford to keep moving forward. And in doing so, it ends up kind of moving in that direction. And also one thing is, in your current space, aligning yourself to your end goals. So for instance, for me, software development was always something, a key of mine, and knowing that, in study, chief technical officer. So recognizing that there's a lot that kind of goes in there, and how could I increase my skills and close any gaps that I have in the interim. So I kind of thought of it as like, before I was paying to go to school, and I was like, well, now I feel like I'm kind of getting paid to go to school, and the flip reverse of taking advantage and learning in different ways to really soak up the information and not kind of let it be passive, even if it's something of like managing teams, if it's something of planning, even other things that are other intangible things that you don't get to really exercise unless you are a lot of times in an environment that's outside of yourself. So managing teams or planning things out, or thinking about a long-term vision and actually executing those things. And I feel like along the way, me like increasing those skill gaps and closing those things have prepared me and molded me better than it would be if I just kind of jumped right off the gun, as well as give the confidence into what you're trying to do. Of course, I would also say, one of the main things is, of course, making sure there's no like real conflicts. If you're working for a lemonade stand and your dream is to now start the best lemonade stand, I'm sure there's probably conflicts with your employer on your idea. So I would definitely also make sure that they aren't conflicting, and then that you could still pursue that in a comfortable manner. What I also want to talk about is like planning your days. This is like one of the big things. If you're working, you have a 9. Typically, people might work 9 to 5. That's about it's about like about an 8-hour day. You have your sleep in the morning, and then you have your afternoons and your nights and your weekends and stuff. And planning your days is like super, 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 super big. Maximizing your time in your weeknights, your weekends, and even setting appointments for the same time. So for instance, like Gino and I, like, in the beginning, what we started to do was we would meet, but then we were like, we should put this on the calendar. And it's always there. Like started treating like an actual, especially in the beginning stages, right? Started treating it like it's an actual business. When you're thinking about it as if it is this full-fledged stuff, it eventually just becomes that, because you're already putting in that particular work. So now it was kind of just, now as things ramping up, it's like talking is like second nature, meeting is second nature. A lot of things is already happening because, you're instilling that stuff and beyond, and kind of treating like a priority and setting out actual time to say, here's what I'm going to do for my business. I'm going to meet, 1 hour a week or whatever the situation, whatever your path is, but being consistent and setting that time out and recognizing that it will take sacrifice, portion of your weeknights and portion of your weekends and things of that nature. But what I will say is, when you get those back, it will be glorious. But what I did for myself and my mental shift was just really thinking about just depositing all of that now and recognizing that, okay, like I'm trying to learn at the same time, keeping that my full time, but I'm also trying to excel another place, and that's going to be a lot. And because that's going to be a lot, this next part later on is important. But what I also mention is, partner up if you can. A lot of people have ideas. You might want to be a solopreneur. And I'm telling you right now, it's possible, but it's tough. And in general, if you're able to find people that have similar and like interests, that could help propel you and push you even farther. Think about, Gino and I having that particular teamwork and things of that nature really do help kind of push, on days where, I might not be feeling it and things of that nature, especially in the beginning when you're putting in a lot of the work and you're waiting for that to pay off. And what I also would say is, know what your time is kind of worth and figure out ways to, smallly outsource those things. When you think outsource, I'm not thinking very big, but if you're even in something small, like you recognize that, your time has to be spent doing this, but you have like all these little emails, all these other things, you could probably figure out ways to kind of get those and offload those smaller items to be able to then focus on the chunks that you have to in your allotted time that you set out for yourself. And last but not least, in all of this is, self-care. Because you are having, you're working, 2 full-fledged jobs. Your weekends are now, weighing in your weeknights. You have to, care for yourself. Somebody wise told me that, sleep was also a form of self-care, something that I never really thought about. I just thought about other things, but I was like, you know what, that is so right. Like, have to get to sleep in, and I also have a mental shift. That was big for me, was shifting my mental to recognizing that, okay, well, I'm not thinking about, oh, I have to do this, then I have to do that, or, it's late at night, I have to meet. It was more like, once I kind of shifted my mindset of like, okay, here's another opportunity for us to kind of get this. Here's an opportunity to chip out the block and get closer to where I want. It made me kind of jump into things a little bit more and just want to kind of have the enthusiasm for it. And that also changes the mood of how you look at it, because it's now what you're embarking on for a longer term. And the last part is what I would say is really, especially in this time and when you're kind of working, a lot of this could kind of lead to like accidental self-isolation, working long days, working long nights, and just kind of isolating yourself just because you're doing a lot of work. And what I will always say is, don't forget to pick your head up and reintegrate people, because a lot of times, like for me, like that's really been the most nourishing part and helped me keep going was everybody else around me, because it does take a lot to kind of do what you want to do, but it's all possible. And starting your business while pursuing something full time, and that's what I wanted to really lay on you guys.
Amazing job, Rayvon. Yeah, everyone here, I can attest to Rayvon speaking so adamantly about self-care. If I could count the amount of times he tells me to take better care of myself, the second things start getting away, or second, yeah, honestly, maybe even we hit ruts within the company, because every startup does it. I probably, it would be a lot of times that it happened, put it that way. So Rayvon is very adamant about keeping things, making sure that you're able to take care of yourself, because if you're not 100%, you really can't give what you need to give to your company and to your customers and to your clients. So it really does start with the individual, the founder. Yeah, it's definitely been an interesting journey, to say the least, Rayvon. So definitely appreciate that insight. There is one speaker who unfortunately was unable to make it with us today, Samara Walker. She will be at tomorrow's event, however, instead of today's event. So, and she right there has, again, an interesting story. She has her own cosmetics and makeup line. Her journey from, not having an idea to working at Amazon, and now starting her own makeup line, and joining an accelerator program and things of those sorts is very, very interesting. So I highly advise people to come tomorrow, at least to hear her speak. So I'm looking forward to that. And I appreciate everyone's patience. So now it's time for Q&A. If anyone has any questions, comments, concerns, jokes, or really just want to shed light on anything that we've heard today or have spoken about today, this is a 100% safe space. We're here to help you, and whatever your objective is to get out of this or attending this event today, because I'm sure everyone came for a reason. So feel
I have
free
a
to
bunch
ask
of
any
questions,
questions.
that have been coming in, so I'm just going to rifle them off. So everyone, feel free
Awesome.
to put the questions in chat. I'm going through some of them. I'm bunching together because they're similar enough. So this one, Joel, assuming it's for you, will UNH be using Ecotech soon?
I know we definitely got some UNH students on the platform and rolling out pilots at select classrooms. So we're not full-fledged yet, but hopefully we can get the president to sign the dotted line over the next couple of years, make this happen.
That's great. This question is for all of you. What was the greatest fear you had before starting? And then how did you overcome that?
I can take a swing at that.
You got it, Lisa.
Oh, okay. I'm sorry. Okay. So I guess my biggest fear was being a female in business and not being taken seriously. A woman of color as well. So I guess it was a little intimidating at first to say that I was going to start anything, and particularly in a state that I wasn't born. I was originally born in Philadelphia. I went to school in New York City, and then I moved here for my first employment. So not being a native of the land and a person of color and female were three things that fed into my fear. Today, I would tell you, because I'm a lot older than all of you. Walk into the room and assume that you're the smartest person until someone else proves you otherwise. I think we get intimidated by whether your age or your education level or the way you look. And generally, particularly all of you, you're here because you're highly aspirational and you're highly entrepreneurial. And so that puts you actually, in my life experience, 75% ahead of most of the population. So walk into a room, walk into an idea with your head high, and there will be people smarter than you eventually. But 9 times out of 10, the fact that you have an idea, the fact that you have a passion, puts you ahead of a lot of other people.
I would say to add to that question, one of my biggest fears being an entrepreneur, or before I really dedicated myself to this life, was just being lost. And sometimes you go into settings where people are using jargon and terminology that are above your head, right, or that are leading you in paths that way I don't understand this. And I remember being in a business competition, and one of the judges asked me a question like, "Hey, what's your projected annual recurring revenue?" And I'm standing there like, "This is an idea contest. What are we talking about money for?" Right? And that almost kind of solidified this idea that you had to be like a business major to be an entrepreneur. But over time, I learned that really that's not the case, and that entrepreneurship has no true prerequisites. And it's really kind of a mindset, kind of a state of mind, if you will. And really, it's about being collaborative, and not only with your team members, but with the customers and the problem that you're trying to solve. And really, the idea that, from my perspective, I define entrepreneur as someone who has equity in their pursuit, who sees a challenge and adopts the risk in the pursuit that they're taking, and takes responsibility for that outcome. And I think it's simple as that, whether you're running a $400 million company or just selling stuff on eBay, right? You take equity in that particular pursuit. And that really doesn't mean you need to have a business degree or some of a prerequisite. It's really a state of mind and letting passion drive it.
So another question is, I have an idea for a food truck. Is that considered an entrepreneur?
Yeah.
Most definitely.
1000%, yes.
Yeah. You have a lot of restaurants that don't have physical locations that actually just do it out the food truck and like as a pop-up and different type of stuff. So for sure.
And whoever's opened up the food truck, I'd love to get their contact information. I can be a taster if need be.
Agreed.
It always comes back to food, Joel. The next question we have is, what was the first step you did after you initially had the idea?
Go test the idea. Ask people what they think about the idea. And don't just ask family and friends, yes, but ask your target audience, whoever that may be. For example, let's take the food truck example of a business. What kind of food are you making? Are you making comfort food? Are you making Mexican food? Are you making Chinese food? If so, go ask the people who are in your target area what they think about, the type of food that you're offering. Maybe for whatever reason, people may not like Chinese food, in that specific area. So if you're considering, selling Chinese foods, that's definitely a valuable thing to know. So the first thing, and that's also how you make the most of your time in the process too, because you don't want to pursue an idea and think, exactly what's going through your mind is the only solution or the best solution or way of executing that. So from our end, from our perspective, the number one thing we did was the second we thought we had an idea, we went and started asking people. We have a saying in our company, we want to fail as fast as possible. And that's what we mean by that, because if we get that out the way, then we know what doesn't work, so we can get closer to what does work. So yeah, go ask people what they think.
I second that.
Well said. Yeah, I would say too, if you have the opportunity, try to find a mentor. Try to find someone who's done it before or can speak to some aspect of that business or idea. Similar to, if you're a kid who wants to play soccer, probably the best decision you can do is find a soccer coach. And hopefully they can help guide you in that particular pursuit.
The one thing I would like to add to that, I love the fail as soon as possible. I'm a B2B business, and I'm working with business owners all day that have sort of this analysis paralysis, where they're trying to figure out exactly the right way to launch. And then before you know it, 3 years have passed by, somebody else took the idea, ran with it, and you're like, oh man, I had that like back in 2000, 20, I was going to do that, and I should have done that. So the idea of testing, if you think about a recipe, you got a new idea for a recipe, because we're going to bring it back to food, Ian, as usual. But you got a recipe, you don't sit and think about what you're going to make, right? You start off with a little bit of this, you test it, you taste it, and you're always correcting, right? Making it better. Even if you think you have it nailed down, how can I add to that? So if you think about launching a new recipe or a new dish that you want to make or to impress your friends, create something, test it, taste it, adjust. Keep always adjusting, and you'll learn through that process. And the brands that think they have it figured out, that don't constantly go back and test, even like a brand like Timberland. I can share a story with you. Timberland's boots were not popular at one time. Nikes came in and took all of their business, right? No one wanted to wear boots. Everybody wanted to wear low profile shoes. And so they had to go back to the drawing board and say, okay, how do we either get in that business or do something that's truly iconic to us? And so you're always, as a business owner, even once you have it down, you'll want to go back, test, proof of concept, and try to make it even better.
Those are great answers. There's two questions that are somewhat related, so I'm going to try to tie them together. It has to do with time management. One, Rayvon, is sort of having you expand a little bit on your day-to-day time management and how you overcome that. And then the one that's related to that is time management, but it was for how you did your startup during UNH and be really good students and athletes and everything else.
So I'll answer the first part. So for my day-to-day, so what I end up doing is, so I might, I typically would start like you know, my full-time job at like 9. So I'll get up like before that and like start looking at emails from study, stuff that had happened in my sleep. In my that things happen in my sleep. So kind of get some things going there. So I kind of hit and message any people that's kind of started from there. And then what I do is I take advantage of my like lunch breaks and things of that nature, to be able to kind of propel things forward. You know, there's only so many meetings I could have at 5 o'clock or 4 o'clock or something like that. So I have to be, you know, kind of schedule those kind of things um, around some of those times to be able to keep propelling and keep things kind of moving forward on a consistent basis. And then what I do is I have like and then after that I have like about a 2.5 hour block of just like, you know, really focusing on whatever work that I have to do for like my full time. And then from there on, what I do is once I finish around that full time, I spend like the next like I take like an hour to, you know, maybe 30 minutes or an hour to like, you know, kind of decompress from work. Like you got to decompress from the day, get a little snack. Then I kind of jump back into the study stuff and doing that particular things for like for the as the wind down of my night, you know, as the wind down of my night, all the way right around to about 10, you know, most days I'm trying to keep it at 10, but some days it extends. And then really trying to keep at it and be consistent in everything that I do to make sure that, you know, that I'm putting in the same amount of work or even more every day.
So oh, go ahead, Lisa.
No, all right. I was just going to say that no matter what level you are in terms of this your launching of your entrepreneurial future, remember that you're in it for money. And so Joel mentioned that even in his what was it, Joel? Even in the contest, right? Someone asked you about revenue. So it's the biggest thing that we all lose sight of, because you know 90% of us are doing this because we have a passion, but we also have to make money. And so one of the things that I did early on is I paid really a lot of attention to customer service, product development. That was my background. And I wasn't paying much to the sales end of it. And so I just want to caution everybody that you want to also understand where the money's coming from and pay some attention to that. If that's not what you do, hire somebody that can concentrate on sales, because at some point that's really going to matter, whether you're going out to an investor or it's the difference between you saying, I'm going to end up not doing this anymore because I have to go out and get a job.
Yes, I fully agree. And yeah, Joel, do you want to answer that second part of the question, or should
Yeah,
I?
I was just gonna add to, and I'll let you speak to this too, because we're kind of in the same boat. You know, from the collegiate scheduling standpoint, um, you know, I guess from my perspective, I was an athlete. I was doing engineering. I was part of 2 clubs and was trying to run a business. So I was really forced to be very strategic with my time, and calendars were my best friend. But 2 things that I really adopted that I think helped me in the long term was, first, you know, just focus on being as efficient as possible and really being present in your space. So when you are, you know, taking your break and eating lunch, you know, focus on just lunch, right? Don't be distracted with your phone, or, you know, let your mind kind of wander. And then I guess the second aspect is really understand when you are falling behind, right? So if you're on assignment, there's no point wasting 3 hours just to be in the same place. You know, call your friends, go to office hours, you know, whatever the respective aids or tools there are in that circumstance. Don't let yourself just be idle, because that just doesn't help anyone.
Yeah, and I second that. Really, very quickly. I was in a very similar boat as Joel, being that I was playing football at UNH. You know, also was running study, and in addition to that, was you know, on multiple boards and a part of different organizations, and that sort of forces that forced me, I should say, to have a specific schedule and stick to it. Now, I will say that I am not the most, disciplined at a rigorous schedule. So that is also something I want to be very, I want to put that out there, um, because what I think is important to figure out what works for you. I know that's a cliche answer, but at the same time, everyone is not, if you're not a morning person, I don't believe you should force yourself to wake up at 5 a.m. if you're most productive at 3 p.m. in the afternoon, and vice versa. So get the most important things done when you're most productive as an individual, and kind of work off of your own clock. And then from there, it's important to prioritize tasks throughout your day and throughout your week and eventually throughout your months and years, based on those priority, or excuse me, based on when you're most productive. And then before you know, you'll be knocking down objectives and goals daily. It's a really good feeling when you get to that point. Yeah, that's kind of what worked for me.
Great, thanks. I just squeeze one more in. There's actually a lot of really good questions, so thank everybody for submitting them. This is a workshop, so Gino and team actually have a workshop exercise, so definitely want to leave enough time for that. So the last question is, what role can white people play in helping to dismantle several of the obstacles you noted as being a BIPOC-run organization or company?
Number one thing that comes to my mind is to be vocal and be committed to whatever you stand by and for, with regards to that. The reason I say that is because right now, I think there's value in being candid from both sides of the spectrum, as people of color, or as a black man myself, especially, and even as as white people. There's value in openly addressing and standing on what's wrong and right in business, and also in life as a whole. That's number one. And number two, I'd say I don't know, whose question this was, but there are a lot of organizations who are really reaping the benefits of taking action right now, versus just providing lip service to, supporting Black businesses, to hiring people of color into their organizations and really building more diverse and inclusive work cultures that help Black people and Latinx people and BIPOC individuals really grow and thrive within the organizations. So I'd really advise, not only from a revenue standpoint, but also a social impact and, a good person standpoint, really is just to take action right now to help provide equity for people across the board. Yeah, right now, I mean, the simplest answer is to take action from my perspective. And thanks for asking that.
Yeah, I think I don't want to say too much, but I feel like in the simplest terms, I think it's like I would say don't be like a detractor. I feel like if my mom always say, if you have nothing nice to say, don't say it. And I feel like in these instances it's like extrapolated out. I think if you feel like you can't add anything positive, then I wouldn't spend time to detract from those things. And especially being in the space, you recognize that your name and things like that, like people talk about you and your name rings, in rooms that you're not in. And a lot of pieces and things that get moved without you even realizing that somebody might have aided or blocked you from something without you even knowing that was the case. So I think a responsible thing to do is just like, watch out, step out the way. If nothing positive to add to that, then just don't detract.
All right, Gino, back to you
Awesome.
for the workshop.
Cool. Awesome. I appreciate everyone for your amazing questions. What we'll do, we'll have all of the speakers drop our emails in the chat for you all before the end of this, to make sure, if there are any questions that you have for any of us, feel free to reach out at any point. We also have tomorrow's event as well, so have opportunities to ask questions there too. So this next segment of what we have going on before we wrap up here is going to be a bit more involved. And the goal with this exercise is really to get everyone in here thinking, regardless of where you are, you know, as an entrepreneur or as an individual considering entrepreneurship, to really start thinking about what are your strengths, what are your expertises, what are your, and even what are your weaknesses to help you position yourself not only as a personal brand, as an individual, to where you can make money yourself just from being who you are every day. And we'll shed more light on that as we move forward. But also as a company, whether you like it or not, the individual is a representation of the company and is the brand. And what do I mean by that? Co-founders get ousted all of the time for posting things that are inappropriate or against whatever they may claim to stand for as an organization. And believe it or not, a lot of times is also by the people who've been with them for the longest, you know. So that's really what I mean by that is, you know, just be cognizant of those things. But this next exercise here is really going to help us start thinking about, you know, what is your expertise? If I were to start a business, where should I start considering ideas first? And what should be the next steps moving forward? And Lisa here will be able to shed a bit more light on the activity that we'll be doing with that. Yeah, Lisa, should we let you take it from here?
Sure. So I often speak to groups of business owners, students who are engaged, like you guys. So we came up with, and this is funny because Ian's gonna laugh, it's another food reference, but a way to keep us focused on what we should be doing in our business pre-launch, post-launch, during the launch. The acronym is EAT. And the EAT, E is for your expertise, A is for your authority, and T is for your trust. So those acronyms are something that I would like, if you guys want to just jot them down separately, E, A, and T. We can kind of walk through just a great exercise of trying to build your brand, whether that's a personal brand. And Rayvon talked to us about how important it is for personal care, personal self-care, the way you look, the way you treat your body, the way you project yourself to your target audience. So EAT are the letters. Gino, do you want me to continue on?
Yeah, you could continue, and I'll chime in as you go.
Okay. So the first thing we want to look at in terms of understanding who your brand is, whether it's the food truck idea or health and beauty, or you want to be a consultant, like I do it for businesses. So what is your expertise? The E stands for what your expertise. And sometimes we can list a bunch of things. We have Joel and Gino were athletes, but that wasn't the expertise that they were trying to go for with a career. So if everyone can just jot down what they feel their expertise is. And you can have multiple expertises or forms of expertise, because when we're done, I think you're gonna end up with one that you really will feel strongly with after we do this exercise. So your expertise is something that you have a passion for. It's something that your friends have told you, wow, man, you're really good at that. You should really pursue that. Your expertise is something that you could stand in an elevator and give 2 or 3 sentences on, no problem, off the bat. It's something that you would love to get paid for, but you do it for free because you're just that knowledgeable on it. So what is your expertise?
And Lisa, just to further your point there, that's a great way to put it. For anyone who may be trying to determine what their expertise may be, because it's okay to not 100% know, you know, what that is right now too. 2 questions that I advise a lot of young entrepreneurs and people who may be in the idea stage to ponder on is number one, who do you want to be as an individual? And what I mean by that is when you die, what do you want to be remembered as? How do you want to spend your days on this earth, day in and day out? What do you enjoy? Like Lisa said, even if you didn't get paid for it, what would you like to do? And also number two is how do you want to make your money? Those two questions are not necessarily one and the same. How do you want to make your money? How you make your money could be completely different from who you want to be. And that's a red flag. If if your morals don't agree with whatever method you considered on making your money. For example, there are people who out here sue for money. They literally go out and find, they prey on people and position lawsuits against them to make money. But morally, that's against my code of ethics personally, and other folks I assume as well. So start with those two questions for anyone who may be not quite sure what their expertise may be just yet. And Lisa, you can continue.
Sure. So the A gets a little tricky, right? Because we have this expertise, we have, maybe one, two, several passions under the same umbrella. Maybe I love to create recipes. I love to make food, and I love working at the restaurant, right? So this is my expertise. I'm all about the food. The authority, the A in the acronym EAT. What is the authority that you bring to that expertise? So the authority is, how do you display that is your expertise? What is your position? How do you relay that to an intended audience? The authority. When you look at, you have expertise, whether it's in software development, gaming, fashion design. I went to the fashion. I didn't go to UNH, although I love the school and I often speak there. I went to a fashion school, and so it was always very interesting to me that people thought their expertise was fashion design, but they didn't necessarily show that creativity when they walked out their dorm room every morning. So you have this expertise. How are you showing your authority? How are you developing your name, your brand, as someone who's an expert? One of the ways that we displayed our expertise in event marketing when we first started Drinkwater Productions LLC is we went out and did events. So instead of me saying to you, hey, hire me for an event, I actually went out and did them. I created my own events. So the authority, if you think about that scenario, my expertise was event planning. I created an event to show my authority in that expertise. So what is your authority? And if you aren't right now matching up an authority with that expertise column, that you guys are looking at, because you just did the expertise, then that's something you want to try to develop. Joel and Gino and Rayvon, do you have any examples that you can show about how you guys are taking your expertise and maybe helping the audience with the authority part?
Yes, actually. So for my expertise is actually pretty unique. I didn't go into computer science or computer engineering. My expertise, I started my first company when I was 14 years old, and that's very, very early, but it was a clothing line. Very early in life, I realized my expertise was finding problems and providing solutions to specific niches. There were people out here who, in the clothing line, it was more than just clothing. It was the actual mission behind it. It was making people feel included. People who may, think higher thoughts. For whatever reason, maybe they weren't being heard, and that's what the clothing line represented. So that's what my expertise is finding problems and matching them with solutions that resonate with the target audience. That's, what I thrive off of. And now during the current times, the authority piece that I'm helping bridge to that expertise, again, there's a lot of attention around Black Lives Matters and COVID-19. employers are looking for ways to hire more candidates remotely and conduct remote hiring practices, interviews. We're, as a company, Study is positioning ourselves as the authoritative brand um, we're positioning ourselves as the authoritative brand to lead the industry in that regard. So that's a combination of expertise as well as authority from my personal lens. And there's no right or wrong answers to these, just so everyone knows.
And just to give an example, like just using just like the tech one as one was even before like, you know, tech is the expertise, but like my authority, especially in the earlier days, was like creating websites for people and stuff. So that was like something where like, okay, I said I'm this, but now I'm actually doing that, and then that actually perpetuated more business, and people are like, oh, well, he has this one, he did that one, so he can do that, you know, and then and like that kind of created that for me versus me just telling people like, oh, I do this and I can do that, but I have nothing to show. Nothing to show.
That's a great example. That's a great example.
Yeah, I'm in kind of a similar boat as Rayvon. I would say I learned at a pretty early age. I was an expert at product design, but more specifically, how can we take innovation and some kind of social aspect and funnel it into that product design, right? And for us, when we looked at Ecotex, it would have been very easy for us to say, okay, let's just build a platform to just get cheaper books, right? But we saw it as just a band-aid to the problem, you know, to the gashing wound. And so really our 40 was like, hey, let's build the beta ourselves, right? Let's build the product ourselves. Let's understand how people tinker with it, understand the user profiles and how this ecosystem is really connected, and then take it a step further. Let's accelerate it. Let's hire a team. We'll manage them, right? And so that's something that I learned is really understanding, okay, from a product perspective, how can we make the most and really be a conscious capitalist?
That's awesome. That's a fantastic example. So we've talked about E, A, and now it's the T. So, and the T is for trust. People want to do business with individuals, brands that they like and they trust. It's the reason why you will pass by one coffee shop to go to the other. It's the reason why you will listen to one artist all day long and maybe listen to a couple of tunes from another artist. So how do you evoke the trust that you're showing about your expertise through the authority? How do you get people to trust that you know what you're doing, that you know what you're talking about, that you're bringing the right thing to them? And are you doing that right now? You know, just something to think about. You know, how do I get people to trust me? How do I get people to buy in to my brand, right? Because that's really important in launching any product, goods, or service. You have people who get it, people who need that. Gino had talked about solving a problem. So I have a problem, you have a solution, but how do you get me to trust you? So that's an important part in building any brand, trust. One of the ways that our team does trust is we do workshops for free. So we'll go into a business group, a realtor group, association, and I'll share my insights free of charge that day as a way of getting people to understand who I am, my background, and get them to trust me. So invoking trust, once you have that expertise that you want to display, you create that authority in your brand, you want to be able to be a brand that people can trust.
And just to piggyback on that, Lisa, a great way to establish trust is number one, of course, being honest with your audience. You'd be surprised how many brands out there are dishonest with their clients or customers or users or prospects, whatever is relevant to you. But also, in addition to that, developing a solution that is reliable and that delivers results every time. What do I mean by that? So, for example, if it's a marketing agency, or let's even take again the food truck example, or it could be a coffee shop, whatever. There's always a competitor, and they're either better than you or they're worse than you in certain things. Everyone can't be great at all things, but what you can be great at is something that is very specific compared to your competitors. So a marketing agency, there are different aspects of marketing, whether it be SEO or whether it be Google AdWords or Facebook ads. If you, for example, become super talented and known within your niche at one of those things, you can be the best to provide that solution every time. And at least when customers come to do business with your company, they have an idea of the results that they're going to get going into an interaction with you or your sales rep or whoever it may be. So that is another way to establish trust within a community, because business owners talk. If one company delivers great results, they'll happily refer them to their friend who also is a business owner and get them to do the same. So that's a great way to establish trust, honesty, and really just delivering a high value solution consistently.
And I would say too, sometimes you just have to go out of your way sometimes, right? And maybe from a business perspective, you lose money on the first client because you understand that relationship that you build in them, they might bring in 5 or 6 more clients, right? That you really spend that extra time understanding the problem, understanding their perspective and how you're solving it and how you're collaborating with them to really build that trust. And I think we can all attest, referrals tend to be one of the strongest ways to increase business, right? If your best friend tells you, hey, try this product, service, or good, that's going to hold more weight typically than most of our channels, right? And so sometimes we find ourselves in positions where, hey, go that extra yard because it might pay some really good dividends in the long term.
That is such a great point. The referrals that come from being in business, being trustworthy, and just being good at what you do. Those referrals are something that I know people try to buy them, but referrals are something that are really priceless. That was a great point. So hopefully that exercise helped you guys. Just remember, eat your expertise, your authority, your trust. As you're building products, as you're building your brand, just kind of go over those acronyms to keep yourself on track and focus. It's really important. It's really easy to get off target or forget where you started or why you started or what the passion was in the first place. There'll be some days that you'll be questioning yourself, but if you can continue to just kind of use that acronym, I think it'll bring you back to what your purpose is.
Awesome. Great. Thanks so much, Lisa, for that wonderful exercise. And thank you all for performing in that wonderful exercise. So I hope that helped you all. We're going to wrap up here in these last couple minutes. If there are any questions, comments, or concerns, again, our emails are here in the chat for anyone who may have questions about that exercise. Or anything that we covered today. So feel free to reach out to us. We're more than happy to help. Yeah, so I'll pass it over to Ian here to wrap up with any final words from our end. That's all I wanted to share with you all. We will have an event tomorrow as well. Looking forward to it. It will be super exciting. We'll have a ton more information to share with you all. Feel free to tell you or your friends, family members, whoever else may be interested in what's going on. It's tomorrow at 6 p.m. Eastern. So look forward to it. And from here, I will pass it to Ian.
Well, thank you so much, Rivon, Lisa. Joel, Gino, phenomenal. And I actually think that even this event is a really good microcosm of just having an idea and what can happen when you have an idea. So, you know, this idea came to fruition back in May or June, and now to use Lisa's acronym, you know, you bring in the expertise, and clearly you heard from some just amazing experts. Their authority goes without saying. They've been there, they've done that, they're in the trenches, a lot of opportunity there. And I didn't know all of you, but I can definitely say after the four, I would trust all four of you implicitly with just your thoughts and your caring. And so thank you for that. So I appreciate everybody coming on, being part of this. It's a very powerful kick. It was an intentional, powerful kickoff to the semester for us. So thank you. And we look forward to those who can make it 6 o'clock tomorrow. So thank you all.